Welcome. I'm Dr. Strum. I'm a neurosurgeon specializing in spinal disorders. Today we'll talk about back pain, what causes it, and how to treat it. However, today, please call me Russ. It's too serious not to get real. If you're a doctor, are you real? If you're a patient, how do you know you're receiving the care you really need? As a spinal neurosurgeon, I bear witness to a lifetime of pain in 1 week's work. Despite cutting-edge technology, most cases of back pain have no surgical option. Among those subset of patients who stand to benefit from surgery and undergo a technically perfect operation, there is a significant rate of lingering and recurrent pain. This is in large part because the root cause of the disease process continues. Why does our healthcare system systematically fail in its basic duty to keep us healthy? Because the antidote would be dissatisfying to hear and financially infeasible due to the current business model of healthcare in this country. The truth is this: most cases of back pain and most other diseases are preventable altogether or can be improved simply by changing what we put in our mouths. Nicotine and unhealthy excessive food. Even nonprofit hospitals must break even each year, and if they told the whole truth about human health, they would be forced to close. Because we put such a low dollar amount on good preventative care, not only is there a shortage of PCPs, but PCPs simply to survive must be overscheduled with patients and paperwork, and that generally impairs them from delivering high-quality preventative care. First and foremost, frank conversations and meaningful action regarding nicotine and obesity, the drivers of most disease. Many good doctors have left healthcare already or are about to because of moral injury. Our society seeks high-tech, low-life cures, but these only perpetuate the problem. Artificial intelligence and robotics are not the panacea. The disease is Dopa-Money, and we're all ensnared by it. Paradoxically, the idea of freedom is what got us into this mess. The antidote is to recognize that this is a superficial and corruptive misconception of freedom. We're all in Plato's cave together, and we can get out together. We can find freedom from this disease within ourselves if we just take some time to think and feel and to listen to one another. I have no disclosures regarding this talk. This talk involves facts and opinions, science and technology, and art and humanities. Many will find this uncomfortable, vague, or trite. However, I would argue that the answer to a cyberpunk nightmare is simple, been thought before, and universally relatable. I am not speaking on behalf of my employer or profession. This talk is an offshoot of a community event I led 6 months ago. Like hospitals across the country, my hospital is losing good doctors. Most physicians are lost to job dissatisfaction and burnout, but an alarming number to suicide. My hospital lost a good spine surgeon, and I was asked to deliver an event to our patient population, letting them know that we were still here for them. I was happy to oblige, but viewed this primarily as an opportunity to empower human beings to lead better lives. This began by telling some easy-to-tell facts, and then more difficult-to-tell and rarely told facts. But then I stopped at even more essential questions, because a successful doctor in U.S. healthcare knows his place. But, thanks to YouTube, there are better forums to ask difficult and essential questions. You see, technology isn't necessarily bad, you just have to use it wisely. Let's proceed. Back pain is one of the most common causes of human suffering. Episodes may improve, but recurrence is common, and there's a high rate of chronic pain. Symptoms can be broadly separated into axial and neurologic symptoms. Axial pain is in and around the back. This is from the intrinsic spinal degeneration and often associated instability or deformity. This is from the wear and tear of discs, joints, muscles, and ligaments. You feel this pain in the midline of your back or sometimes in the paraspinal region. On the other hand, neurologic symptoms are from mass effect of this degeneration on nerves, and you feel neurologic symptoms as extremity symptoms, radiating nerve pain, often with associated numbness, weakness, or incoordination. The goals of your initial evaluation with your primary care doctor are to characterize the problem, to identify red flags, which are symptoms suspicious for urgent or emergent pathology, to identify risk factors for the development and progression of disc disease, to initiate non-operative care if indicated, which is most of the time, and if that fails, then to determine the timing and need for imaging and spine surgery evaluation. What causes back pain? By far the most common cause is degeneration, wear and tear, or arthritis of the discs and joints. Adults can have spinal deformities too, like childhood scoliosis, but unlike that, it's usually accompanied by severe degeneration. Trauma, tumor, infectious, and vascular causes are also possible. What are these red flags? Well, when they're present, they increase the probability of an issue requiring expedited diagnosis and treatment. And so when they're present, the workflow of management is different. Neurologic red flags include symptoms of severe nerve compression from any cause, whereas non-neurologic red flags refer to symptoms of tumor, infection, and fracture, which are obviously treated differently from wear and tear problems. When you have red flags and urgent MRI is indicated, you bypass an attempt at non-operative management. Your primary doctor can order a stat outpatient MRI or direct you to the ER depending on the situation. The neurologic red flags include acute severe weakness in any extremity, unable to move an extremity against gravity, saddle anesthesia, or complete loss of bowel and bladder control. Red flags for fracture obviously include trauma, which is in young people generally major, but in older patients, even minor trauma can cause fractures, especially if you have a skeletal disease like osteoporosis or ankylosing spondylitis. Red flags for tumors, the source of your back pain, include a history of cancer or unintended weight loss. Red flags for infection include fevers, IV drug use, recent infection, or immunosuppressed state. Now, when these red flags are absent, which is most of the time, the initial management of acute or chronic back pain or radicular pain is a trial of conservative therapy. This consists of 4 to 6 weeks of physical therapy, and your primary care physician can initiate this. The rationale is that most cases of neck and back pain and radiculopathy improve after 4 to 6 weeks of non-specific, non-invasive treatment. Disc herniations can often regress, arthritic joints can settle down, and stretched muscles can heal. Since there is no cure for disc disease and there is no emergency, it makes sense to start from less invasive to more. Physical therapy often works. It improves your core muscle strength, thereby pulling the center of gravity backward away from the discs and joints and promotes natural healing of the problem. It's important to have a healthy mindset. PT is not a quick fix, neither is surgery. Sometimes several weeks are needed before PT delivers relief. Non-opioid medications are available for nerve and back pain. Opioids should be used sparingly, if at all. Now, if conservative management fails, then an MRI and spine surgery referral are indicated. Now, if you're unfortunate and your pain persists despite a course of physical therapy and medication, it's important to know that surgery may be an option, but isn't necessarily the best option, the only option, and may not be an option at all. Depending on the diagnosis, pain management procedures, and these are given by either pain management doctors or rehab physicians, can be as effective or more effective than surgery. These include steroid injections and radiofrequency ablations. On the other hand, when a nerve is severely compressed or the spine is malaligned, then surgery, generally speaking, is indicated. But again, we should hit the pause button on surgery for a moment and recognize that there are other non-interventional, non-invasive pain therapies, including pain psychology strategies, which allow one to distance oneself from chronic pain. Pain and suffering are not the same thing. These cognitive strategies are actually more effective than surgery for some cases of neck and back pain. There are surgical options for some patients with neck, back, or nerve pain when non-operative measures fail. Most people are not well served by spine surgery. Some patients who are surgical candidates must modify risk factors for poor outcomes, complications, and recurrent pathology before pursuing surgery. Otherwise, surgery would have limited effectiveness and may even do more harm than good. In broad categories, there are 2 basic spine surgeries. There are decompressive spine surgeries. These go by the names of laminectomy, discectomy, foraminotomy, and these treat radicular pain. Again, that's nerve pain radiating down the arm or leg when there's compressive pathology on imaging that correlates with the pain and failure of an appropriate course of non-operative management. These are very effective and honestly quite simple surgeries for us to perform. They have a success rate at relieving nerve pain of about 80 to 90%. Many patients go home the same day or the next morning. And the outcomes here are quite good for that particular problem. It's important to know, however, that numbness and weakness may or may not improve, and any improvement in these symptoms will take time and often be incomplete. These decompression surgeries do not help neck and back pain because these are taking the pressure off of the nerves. They don't fix the underlying wear and tear process. Now, there's another group of surgeries known as spinal fusion surgeries that can help some cases of neck and back pain. But these are only indicated for a select few patients who have what we call a mechanical pain generator. And those include spondylolisthesis, flat back syndrome, scoliosis, or single level disc collapse, with failure of at least 3 months of non operative management, good bone density, no active nicotine use, and a body mass index less than 40. It's important to know that these surgeries are hardly perfect. They are usually successful, but not highly successful. They're about 50 to 70% likely to deliver relief of neck and back pain, but rarely do they actually cure the pain. They help, but don't cure. And of course, that means that they fail to help at all, a significant minority of the time. These surgeries are frequently coupled with decompression. These involve putting screws and rods and bone graft in the spine to stiffen the worn out areas in hopes of helping the pain, but they're not perfect because there's a risk that the bones won't heal. And even if they do heal, then the neighboring areas can wear out because they have to overwork to compensate for the fuse level. In fact, there's about a 20 to 40% chance of adjacent segment degeneration over the decade after that fusion surgery. Now, a subset of patients who could otherwise have spinal fusion have an option for motion preservation surgery, which, by preserving motion, carries a lower risk of adjacent segment disease. But even then, this type of surgery does not cure the underlying degenerative process. And again, most cases of back pain are not even well treated with surgery because they're from diffuse wear and tear. There's no surgical option for most people suffering from neck and back pain, unfortunately. But it's important to see a spine surgeon to know your options if physical therapy fails and if you've obtained an MRI. So this raises the question, since there's no cure for disc disease, what can we do? There are around 75 moving parts in the spine, and neck and back pain is, generally speaking, from many or most of those wearing out. Well, here's where things get more difficult. We have to acknowledge, yet we often fail to, that neck and back pain requiring medical attention is often the tip of an iceberg. That iceberg is not benign. These risk factors for disc disease are so pervasive, indolent, and dissatisfying to discuss that they are commonly ignored in US healthcare. Yet they are the most common, preventable, and treatable causes of the very problems, including back pain, many patients present with. Medical interventions, including surgery, are only a band-aid when unhealthy behaviors continue. There's a common conception that surgery is the fix and that everything else is a band-aid. But surgery itself is a band-aid when the root cause persists. Modifiable risk factors are preventable causes of back pain. There are many studies on the topic, some with different degrees of predictability, but there's statistical significance in nearly all. This particular study suggests a 4 to 6 times higher likelihood of suffering from chronic neck and back pain if you have obesity or chronic nicotine use. These are also risk factors for surgical complications, recurrent pathology, and patient dissatisfaction after spine surgery. These risk factors are too serious to ignore. How do they cause disc disease? Nicotine use is thought to cause disc disease because it diminishes blood supply. There's a vasoconstrictive effect and an atherosclerotic effect to the delicate blood supply to the discs. And this reduces the naturally low blood supply the discs have that provide nutrition. The less nutrition, the more wear and tear there is to discs. They lose their oxygen content and their basic building blocks of life. Any form of nicotine has this effect, not just smoking. Obesity causes chronic mechanical stress to the spine. The spine bears the body weight. That causes the spine to wear out, and then when the spine does wear out, it exacerbates the stress. Now, there are other causes. For example, having a physically demanding job, age, and genetics. But unfortunately, as humans, we tend to dwell on those things that we can blame onto others or in the past, but not things that we can control. I would like to really advocate for a focus on what we can control with these modifiable risk factors. Any form of nicotine, even a patch, even vaping, and any degree of obesity, body mass index even 30, will carry an association with disc disease. Focus on what you can control. Nicotine cessation cannot reverse existing disc disease, but it can lessen pain severity and lower the risk of further degeneration. Patients using nicotine generally can have the decompression-only surgeries, which, as you recall, is for nerve pain only, with no expectation of neck and back pain relief. And they can have these surgeries with reasonable safety and effectiveness, at least in the near term. However, nicotine will continue to cause disc disease, and the patient will be at increased risk of new and recurrent symptoms in the future. And unless there is urgent pathology, spinal fusion surgery, the surgery for neck and back pain, cannot be performed with acceptable risk-benefit ratio in patients actively using nicotine. Because just as nicotine diminishes the blood supply to the discs, it impairs the bone healing necessary for a good outcome. Elective fusion surgery in patients using tobacco is deferred until the patient is nicotine-free for at least a month, has a negative urine test to prove it, and is committed to a lifelong cessation. There are resources for nicotine cessation as listed here, and it's important to know that a patch can be used as a bridge to cessation, but it will cause poor bone healing and wear and tear just like smoking. Weight management is an essential tool in the management of back pain in patients who are obese. All patients with a BMI greater than 30 are urged to lose weight for long-term spine health. The weight loss can reverse what's already happened, but it can lessen pain severity and lower the risk of further wear and tear. Patients in the mild to moderate obese category, BMI 30 to 40, can generally undergo decompression and fusion surgery with reasonable safety and effectiveness. That said, obesity will continue to cause disc disease, and the patient will be at increased risk of new and recurrent symptoms in the future. However, unless there is urgent pathology, spine surgery cannot be performed in patients with morbid obesity, BMI greater than 40, with an acceptable risk-benefit ratio due to the increased risk of infection, complications, and recurrent disease. There are many medications that are now available, as well as other strategies to help with weight loss. Now, I am a spine surgeon, but will tell you that prevention is safer, more powerful, and more durable than any treatment that I might provide. Unfortunately, the tobacco and food industries fail to disclose the full hazards of their products. Many, I would actually argue most doctors, are not fully aware of the effects on the spine. Nicotine and obesity cause neck and back pain. This is not your fault. You never chose this. Most Americans are overweight or obese. Don't blame yourself. But don't be proud of this either. This is a health condition that you must tackle to maximize the chance of a good quality of life. Don't joke about it. Don't feel embarrassed. It's a medical condition you have, not something you are. This is not an identity. This is a health condition that's too hazardous to ignore or defer. Whether you have surgery or not, new or worsening disc disease in the years to come is expected with persistent obesity and nicotine use. So, what can I do for my neck and back? First and foremost, risk factor modification. There's no way to know whether nicotine or obesity was the actual cause of your back problem, but there's a high chance that it was if you have these risk factors. And if you have these, don't blame yourself. Just focus on what you can control to make tomorrow the best life you can have. And I also want to remind everyone that surgery, when chosen carefully and performed well, is generally speaking successful. We can help people significantly. We can transform lives for the better with appropriate spine surgery. If spine surgery wasn't a good option for people, I would never be coming to work every day. But it's only an option for a subset of patients. And when the root cause of the disease process is not addressed, the benefits are short-lived. So we have to look at the long-term strategy to manage neck and back problems. Here are some references from which this talk to our local community was based. Shortly after I delivered this talk, which as you recall was delivered because a good spine surgeon quit and our hospital needed me to tell our community that we were still here for them, another good spine surgeon quit, Dr. Gooby. His insights about American healthcare are an honest assessment. Quitting was the right decision for him, and I'm not here to challenge the decision he had to make for himself. However, because so many good doctors are hurting and considering quitting, and because patients need us more than ever, I'd like to add some of my realizations to Dr. Gooby's in hopes of convincing you to stay in the fight for life. My story is similar to Dr. Gooby's, and if you talk to most doctors, we all have similar stories. I came from a humble background in rural America and aimed high. Dr. Gooby talks about going to MIT and having dreams of changing the world through science and technology. I also loved math and science as a kid, but felt that something was missing in them alone, so I chose to obtain a liberal arts education down the road with a concentration in science. While in college, I discovered that a career in medicine would be best suited to me, as it offered a rewarding balance of science and humanity. Unfortunately, I continued to be enamored with scientism, the belief that science always offers the best or only answer to life's dilemmas. I neglected to engage myself fully in humanities courses, which in retrospect were far more pertinent to my career and future life. However, just as college ended, I succeeded at coming to terms with an uncomfortable but no longer avoidable truth about myself. I shortly thereafter met Scott, and we had a wedding ceremony years before official marriage was law. Scott showed me that truth and love are the antidote to a societal disease that caused self-hatred and embarrassment simply because of an unchosen fact of life. Scott helped me survive neurosurgical training, which is among the most rigorous. Scott is an artist, and his work broadened my perspective about life. However, all was not gay. Scott developed intractable chronic cluster headaches that cause intense nerve pain behind his left eye. This pain makes him mostly homebound. Our lives were permanently changed. We tried 20 medications, but the simplest and most natural, ice, was the most effective. He continues to create art despite daily pain and is a constant source of inspiration. He creates art of people as animals and animals as people, and his work shows the gray zones of life. As hobbies, we like to heal damaged things. We rescued and restored these antiques and cabinet for less than $100. We rescued 3 abandoned cats. Lucy, who tells me to put work down once in a while. Agatha, who is full of light. Ethel, who is the muse of Scott's art and the primary actor in the installation art you're about to see. But listen up. As I am working on this project, another doctor I knew commits suicide, and another quit due to mysterious symptoms without a structural diagnosis, likely burnout. We need to find a solution to broken backs, broken doctors, and broken healthcare before it is too late. Welcome to my office. This installation art will end where it begins. Our work is life. But what is life? That'll take some work. To find out, we'll have to enter to grow in wisdom to better serve humankind. When you first walk in, you'll notice Scott's art. Animals as people, people as animals, and all the gray zones in between. It's a nice relief from a very stressful job. You have a cat on your head, it makes you take stress a little bit less seriously and look at the big picture. Art can provide beauty and inspiration. Then you'll realize that things aren't quite beautiful, and that's where my contribution comes in. Much like spine surgery is a fusion between neurosurgery and orthopedics, my office is a fusion between Scott's art and some science that I've been making the last few months that bring up relevant issues in healthcare. And the fundamental question I'd like to have everyone face is, are we free? What is freedom? How do we know we're free? Is freedom even possible? We may think that we are choosing certain things we like fake gold watches. But how does that make us free? How do we know that we're not already ensnared by some other stronger force? Are we really performing according to our duty? Are we living the best life that we can live? Let's start off with some easy examples, but then recognize they're not quite so easy. I'd like to confront a target we can all agree upon, which is the tobacco industry, but help us recognize that it's not the tobacco industry alone that's the source of many of the problems in US society and healthcare. It's greater issues about freedom and our definition of it. I have 9 lives, but wouldn't let nicotine touch one. Don't let the tobacco industry ruin the only life you have. So why is the tobacco industry ruining so many lives? Millions of people are killed each year by it. Why is this allowed? Freedom. Or is that real freedom? Well, before it made you addicted to nicotine, the tobacco industry failed to disclose the true hazards. Chronic incurable neck and back pain is an expected complication of chronic nicotine use. In addition to an early death, tobacco causes a lifetime of pain. The tobacco industry exploits our society's pathologic conception of freedom, wherein we define freedom as merely choice making. Choice is a necessary but insufficient criteria for freedom, however. Equally important elements are knowledge and power. The tobacco industry intentionally deceives the public about the hazards of its products, stripping people of knowledge. Its products are addictive, stripping people of power. The result is that while people may seem to choose to continue using their products, they really are not choosing but are coerced. The tobacco industry fails to give informed consent. I, as a surgeon, have to provide informed consent for my procedures. Our society makes it far easier to kill than it is to heal. The tobacco industry intentionally kills and tortures millions of human beings each year. It commits this evil exclusively to enrich itself, demonstrating how cheap it views humanity, and I would say how cheap we view ourselves and each other. For-profit healthcare is organized greed. For-profit healthcare's Medicare Advantage plans, generally speaking, offer less, not more, than regular Medicare. That's because these plans can exclude certain procedures or tests that regular Medicare would allow and that are medically necessary. For-profit healthcare profits by offering to alleviate human suffering, but then denying necessary treatment. And when these denials lead to death and suffering, for-profit healthcare is evil. It is so evil and powerful that it controls the law and is nearly impossible to sue successfully. Below this is an anecdote of a patient who had progressively increasing nerve impingement on her MRI and had trialed physical therapy before that had failed. There was no chance with increasing MRI findings that yet more physical therapy would relieve her condition, and surgery was very much indicated to help her. But the insurance company refused to allow her to have the surgery unless she trialed yet another course of physical therapy because she hadn't done it in the last 12 months. The problem for her was not just a 6-week delay required by having more physical therapy, but that she was going to be moving down south. And she could not have her surgery completed in time for the move. So she was then therefore forced to move herself down south with severe pain that could risk her falling, and not to mention just the suffering involved with extending an intractable pain condition. So this case illustrates a common tragedy that hundreds of thousands of Americans can attest to. But are doctors and is healthcare so different from these evil tobacco companies and greedy healthcare insurance companies? That's the question. And I'll argue that there are some gray zones here. We are different, but are we categorically different from the tobacco industry? When you should know better, does failing to tell the whole truth essentially amount to a lie? Do you ever see a doctor talking as the cat is talking in the sign? I haven't seen such a doctor. Even though I try to be honest with my patients, I don't think I talk in as blunt of a way as I should if I truly revere their life, like a family member. Nicotine will hurt your neck and back decades before it kills your heart and brain. Nicotine is pain disguised as pleasure. We know this because nicotine causes significant neck and back, shoulder, and hip problems, and the pleasure effects of nicotine wane. Nicotine is an addiction, it's slavery that is disguised as freedom. Why aren't these basic truths shared everywhere in healthcare? Well, I'll tell you why. Doctors and hospitals are held captive by an even greater disease process that prevents us from sharing the whole truth to our patients. We don't want to hurt our patients, but we are not allowed to help them fully because our hands are shackled by consumerism. Consumerism by people and commodification of people are two sides of the same coin. This coin is spent easily and silently, enslaving, torturing, and killing us. Even those people and institutions obligated to save lives fail to deliver life-saving information and action for fear of dissatisfying the customer. Satisfying but harmful lies replace unpleasant but essential truths. We witness torture, but stay silent because we too are enslaved. Instead, we profit from and perpetuate this torture, offering cures that always benefit us, but only help the patient sometimes and a little, often with side effects. When inalienable rights become tainted as products, people become disposable. How wounded humanity is, how necessary truth and love are. And here's the problem: Dopa-Money. It begins and ends and begins and ends with consumption. Consumption, often food and nicotine, leads to pleasure, causing more consumption that results in degeneration. And that can be your spine, your hips, your heart, your whole body. That later results in pain. And that leads to problems that sometimes we can treat in healthcare. But too often, we fail to tackle the underlying disease process. And so the treatments that we provide benefit from this disease cycle, and we fail to stop the cycle. And more pain continues. We in healthcare have careers made possible from suffering, yet we neglect systematically to stop the root cause. But it even goes further than that. We censor the truth because we're worried about customer satisfaction. In America, we review doctors like products online, and we value 5-star reviews, and many surgeries, even spine surgeries especially, have a gray zone of indications, and some of them are sham surgeries. And we perform some of these surgeries because they deliver a high amount of revenue. And we value these things over life-saving but non-dopaminergic truth and love. Because there is a high rate of poorly indicated and even sham lumbar spine fusions in this country, insurance companies actually have a necessary role of regulating doctors who are unable to police themselves. So they're not all evil and we're not all innocent. I would like to argue that in the end, truth and love are more satisfying and better for business. We just need a reckoning of the accounting method. And when we should know better, there really is no difference between censorship and silence. So why isn't real information spoken and written everywhere in our temple of life? Why don't we even try? Well, what is this real information? Have you ever seen a doctor talk like this? obesity is not your fault. Obesity wasn't chosen. Most Americans are overweight and obese. It has genetic and environmental causes, but we view obesity as an identity we prefer not to tackle because it's dissatisfying. Obesity causes the spine to wear out. Then sometimes there's a role for fusion surgery. And as we discussed earlier, fusion surgery can help many cases of back pain. But there's a substantial minority of patients who get no better or even worse pain despite a technically perfect and well-indicated fusion surgery. And that's called failed back syndrome. And the patients come back to see us, and we tell them there's nothing we can do to help them further. And they're forgotten. In the end, overconsumption, which led to obesity, causes degeneration, only leading to more consumption, more degeneration, and finally, the patient themselves is consumed by healthcare. And even when spine surgery works to help that patient's pain, recall that it's intrinsically imperfect. It will eliminate motion and likely cause at some point wear and tear elsewhere. So our procedures for neck and back pain come at a cost, and that cost is more degeneration. We fix a problem, but create others. We not only fail to treat the root cause of disease, but we create side effects which are their own disease processes. It goes even deeper than that. Almost all doctors are part owners of the tobacco industry. Did you know that 0.5% of the S&P 500 is the tobacco industry? And if you have a retirement fund or invest in the, quote, stock market, you're likely part owner of the tobacco companies. In fact, most doctors are part owners in the tobacco industry. We don't have an option to exclude tobacco firms from our 401ks. We profit from self-destruction in so many ways. We're hypocrites. Most of us don't know, fools, or don't care cowards. But if you know and care, you can emancipate humanity from suffering when possible, and you can share truth and love when not. Your white coat and your motto of your health organization are neither necessary nor sufficient, but they're still morally permitted. These are all tools, like AI and robots. You have to know your priorities. We're too often phony in medicine. We hide behind white coats. We dress up just like these cats are dressed up in dresses. But truth and love don't play the games that fools play. Truth and love win anyway. And we too often in medicine are fools. Almost all good things are free, and they grow with sharing. Bad things have a cost that exceeds their price. Tragically, money is embedded in healthcare, as you can see in the bottom right corner. And that leads us to distance ourselves from our calling, which is to serve patients. When we distance ourselves, we become apathetic. And that apathy is actually cruelty. It's cloaked by distance. And we succumb to so many forms of greed. That's just slavery, smothered in gold. It's slavery to us. We are, in some ways, the greatest fools. When we ignore the elephant in the room, aren't we little more than technicians who profit from the unchosen self-destruction of our patients, making them feel a little better for a little while, and only if we are lucky? And that's to the patients, but what about to us? When we do only what it takes for a content, compliant, and compensated visit, are we even free? Does doing the easy thing rather than the right thing make us, the healthcare workers, free? Or is it a sign of our own slavery to our particular whims and circumstance? In that sense, is healthcare more like the tobacco industry than we'd rather admit? Doctors are lured into healthcare and kept into healthcare by monetary incentives that pervert the essence of healthcare. Excessive student loan debt does not help, but there's also a culture of materialism and chauvinism among doctors. And that's just another form of slavery. This has cruel effects on our own health. Why do you have more sympathy for your pet than your patient? It's because you're a wounded healer, and you're wounded because healing wasn't what you thought it was. We are all wounded healers. We are victims of, and we propagate psychosocial disease. We need to step back and recognize that this is a description. It is not the best prescription for the problem. Society, mind, behavior, body, and pain all have relationships. And unless that relationship is healed, we're doomed. Let's get back to the damage that money creates. Money ruined too many good friends' lives. Money ruins the good life. Why is that? Well, markets are efficient at distributing material goods, but when money is mixed with human goods, the paradoxical effect is to cheapen them. As Professor Michael Sandel points out, money crowds out and taints what really matters. And when zero-sum games are played with matters of moral importance, everyone loses, even the winners, because the game itself is corruptive. I am frequently, in our small community, called the best. Certainly not the best, but that's what many people refer to me as. And I'm frequently ranked 5 stars. But I will tell you that that belittles everyone, and that turns me into your drug rather than your healer. Your drug equates to satisfying lies rather than essential truths, because your mind, behavior, and society are the problem, though not your fault. But telling you the truth, it would upset you as my customer, and so I become your drug. And doctors are belittled. Our environment calls us providers instead. But when the provider can no longer perform like a Disney character, which is a caricature of a true and moral healer, the provider becomes expended by the system just like the customers. Now, I'm a successful doctor. You may be too. You and I are currently the game's winners, but we've lost too many good friends to it, and in time could lose ourselves too. Even more worrisome, we're losing patients every day, and we're failing to help them with their underlying disease. Bean counters. I don't like calling you names, but when you call me provider, how can I call you anything different? I'm not a provider, I'm a physician. Justice is part of my calling. As Dr. Cornel West states, justice involves telling truths. We're truth tellers, we're love warriors, we're wounded healers, and we fight a sick world. Physicians cut against the grain of disease. Our duty is to save lives, not satisfy. It is nice to do both, but often not possible because customer satisfaction generally is the root cause of patient ailments. And we have so many lily gilders in healthcare who try to make everything saccharine. But lily gilding is not sweet. In response to an increasingly difficult regulatory, billing, and legal environment, physicians spend more time on computers than with patients. Physicians must enter thousands of keystrokes and thousands of mouse clicks each day to document and electronically link information irrelevant to patient care, solely to satisfy increasingly arbitrary and burdensome requirements for the doctor and hospital to get paid and generate metrics that make us competitive with others. Yes, in our cruel world, two neighboring not-for-profit hospitals view each other as competitors and scheme against each other. We spend hours each day crafting notes, just as meticulous as our surgeries, to protect ourselves from a litigious society. We must complete unscheduled phone calls with insurance companies to appeal their unethical rejections of medically necessary tests and procedures. which in Orwellian fashion they phrase as not medically necessary. These appeals often involve waiting on the phone for half an hour only to talk to a passive-aggressive clerk, who will then schedule another phone call on a separate occasion with the sellout insurance company doctor. However, this doctor will call you at some random time during a 4-hour window during which you must pick up immediately, even if you're with a patient, or else you have to go through the whole scheduling process again. The doctor is never compensated for their time wasted on the phone with the insurance company. We have to find time for these appeals during our already packed days. Because healthcare is viewed as a product rather than as a right, patients have lost respect for the unique and essential roles doctors play. It is common for them to arrive late but want to visit longer than scheduled. Many saturate their visits with emotional narratives, and you have to play their spine opera to avoid negative reviews. Many are grossly informed by information they read online. Some even make overt threats, mostly to make your lives more miserable in nonviolent ways, but some even threaten violence and require security to be called. All this commodification, overstimulation, and degradation causes moral injury. Moral injury is why doctors are leaving healthcare. Endless, increasing, and burdensome government regulations requiring 10 administrators per physician are necessary because we are unable to regulate ourselves and organize toward a greater cause. When money is mixed with health, it makes everyone sick. People talk about work-life balance a lot nowadays, but work-life balance is not the solution. It's not the solution because our work is life. And anything less would be cruel to our patients. We have a calling, and if we have something to believe in, we'll work 50% more hours. The problem is not work hours. The problem is not lack of yoga mats. It is lack of a coherent moral vision to follow. We need to have a better work to live in. We need to stop fixing human suffering with material goods. Patients and doctors are both held captive and alienated from each other by Dopa-Money and consumerism. Dopa-Money is the biopsychosocial disease, and consumerism is the corrosive behavior that emanates from it. Now, at least in the near term, American healthcare will always be a business. But we can use business as a tool. We should not use it as an end. Let's excel at business, but only as a means, not as an end. When it's an end, it'll put us to an end. Optimizing human health is the purpose of healthcare, and business, at least right now, is a necessary tool. But we cross a line. We've already crossed it. When business considerations become the primary focus, the dehumanizing effects cause staff burnout and patient dissatisfaction, and the business paradoxically struggles. How do we find ourselves? Well, we're in the business of humanity, and that requires humility, purpose, and dialogue. Technocratic hubris, bourgeois trappings, and mindless silence are simply addictions to power, money, and mediocrity, nicotine in gilded form. The only true freedom is doing the right thing, and it is humbling because we never get there. But the process of getting there is the freedom, I would argue. What is technocratic hubris? We can blame the bean counters and lily gilders, but it exists within physicians too. It's scientism, the belief that the next robot or AI algorithm is going to fix the problem. Such hubris is often the showcase and funding source of national meetings and even confounds science itself. Much has been written about medical researchers intentionally forging data to become famous, but far more research has been tainted by the subconscious biases and cult-like groupthink of like-minded and powerful physician scientists, many having narcissistic personality types that they're not even aware of. Seeing and interpreting data in ways that incorrectly favor the procedures or ideas they happen to have enthusiasm and pride about. Due to our culture that more is better, which happens to be more profitable, it's not surprising that the American medical literature generally supports doing more procedures than the European medical literature suggests to be necessary. Yet the Europeans are far healthier and have more affordable health care. Bourgeois trappings are the material excesses that so many doctors lose themselves in. I know a doctor who has 3 Bentleys and several divorces. all to escape from an unhappy life. How many Bentleys does it take for you to know you're doing something wrong? And mindless silence is a little better. It's putting your head down and accepting things as they are. These are just other forms of slavery. What the patient wants, the doctor wants. And we can find it together. All the patient wants is emancipation. Now, is emancipation even possible? That's a philosophical question we'll talk about in a moment. Certainly, some diseases can be emancipated from. Some surgeries are a definitive fix for a problem. But much of the time, there is not a real cure. But truth and love will suffice when emancipation is not possible. And truth and love, it turns out, is how we find emancipation when it is possible. These are the only things that patients want. We can have successful business by honoring these basic virtues and human needs. We can escape from this cage together. This is all the patient wants and nothing more. They don't want spa treatments, VIP lounges, manicure stations. Every moment in life is a question and an answer. Truth and love or death. Every moment is an opportunity to emancipate our world and ourselves. Consumerism by people and commodification of people are two sides of the same coin. This coin is spent silently and easily, enslaving, torturing, and killing us. Even those people and institutions obligated to save lives fail to deliver life-saving information and action for fear of dissatisfying the customer. Satisfying but harmful lies replace unpleasant but essential truths. We witness torture but stay silent because we too are enslaved. Instead, we profit from and perpetuate this torture, offering cures that always benefit us, but only help the patients sometimes and a little, often with side effects. When inalienable rights become tainted as products, people become disposable. How wounded humanity is, how necessary truth and love are. So why come to work tomorrow? Once the light shines, you see that there's little moral difference between causing suffering and neglecting it. The light reveals that most contemporary suffering is caused by an on-off switch, regulating Dopa-Money, and it is arbitrary which way you found it, whether you found it on or off, or what form it was in. Just as lost innocence cannot be felt again, enlightenment cannot be unseen. The only true freedom is doing the right thing. And because we're human and can never see, achieve, or own exactly what the right thing is, the only realistic freedom is the struggle to find and do it. Such freedom is within our grasp every time and everywhere. Such freedom requires us to confront that we're sometimes part of the problem. Every moment is an opportunity to emancipate our world and ourselves. There's no difference between our world and ourselves. It is arbitrary which body you occupy. The opportunity to emancipate human beings from suffering is the pure and only reason to come to work every day. Everything else in healthcare is simply a means to this end. Our lives are too short not to tell the whole truth and not to share pure love. Why come to work tomorrow? Because no pleasure is as good as pain is bad. We know that from life experience and neuroscience. Pleasures tend to decrease over time. Pain tends to linger. It is arbitrary which body you occupy. Sometimes you can cure, usually you can prevent, but always you can heal. And what an awesome opportunity to engage your mind and relieve suffering, a higher pleasure. But healthcare is diseased by a confusion of means as ends and perverted by wars between means. When healthcare is a product rather than a right, people become disposable when money can be made. Let's be honest, because our society is a diseased video game fueled by dopamine that alienates us from ourselves and each other, most aspiring doctors don't go into medicine for purely altruistic reasons, when in practice, many continue to put money and ego above patient. Greed and apathy are the greatest source of pain and suffering in this country, and doctors are not above it. We must reawaken the purpose of healthcare together. That requires scrutinizing the society from which disease forms, an overdue reckoning of self and society, clarifies our purpose, and purifies our soul. However, don't be too pure or abstract. You'll get nowhere. We'll never eliminate money. Because we're only human, money encourages work that is necessary for society to function but painful to perform. The fear of losing money encourages responsibility. But money needs to be accountable too, as do those who have it. Money can be an effective means, but can never be the end. Otherwise, it will be the end of us. Always ask yourself these questions. Will I die having never lived? What if I'm only living on the surface of life? Is what I'm seeing now reality, or do I need to look harder? Is what I am thinking now cogent, or do I need to reassess? All the answers are the same. Engage everything, both within and without, and take nothing for granted. This is an effective patient safety strategy during surgery, by the way. Even if you're usually right in your role in this world, accept the reality that you're only a minor actor and sometimes get your few lines wrong. Listen as much as you speak. Even if you're an elite healer, don't be too proud to tell others you're in pain. As a surgeon, you cut against the grain of disease. When you recognize that the disease is a lot bigger than anatomy and procedures, your work perspective might broaden, but the central purpose does not. Cut against the grain of disease. Cut against bad medicine fueled by greed and apathy. Burnout is a diagnosis, but not a destination. The description is not the prescription. Stay in the game, try to change the rules, and support each other. But when you can't change the rules, don't take the game to heart, but still try to win to serve a higher purpose. Authenticity and effectiveness are not mutually exclusive. Together, they'll make you stronger and your world healthier. Because none of us truly gets there, the most confident of us are generally the greatest fools, and the happiest are often the greatest sadists. Truth and love are Socratic, requiring the humility to listen to others, but also the audacity to tell others they're misguided. Truth and love are basic human virtues to have faith in, but they cannot be fully realized blindly. They require an always evolving, reflective equilibrium between principle and practice. To do the right thing, your motives must be pure and your eyes must be sharp, and you need to talk to each other and always evolve. The internal and external are not mutually exclusive. You'll never see, achieve, or own exactly what the right stuff is. Even when you do perfect surgery, your outcomes will be varied due to factors outside your control, ranging from biology to chance to societal disease that continues to grip the patient. That said, your patients deserve nothing less than the very best fight against their disease. Because your tools are highly technical, you must embody perfectionism. However, admit that such demands have great personal and family cost and make time and space for yourself and them. No data will ever prove that life is worth living or that good things exist. Nothingness is the origin and destination of our material world, but not the prescription for our existence, which is now, post-material, electric, fleeting. The answer to a meaningless, uncertain, and dark world is not to retreat, but to re-engage it with a better version of yourself. Stop looking at the world through the lens of fault and fix. Even if patient behavior causes most disease, it's not their fault. It is a societal disease. Look at the world as an opportunity to grow and heal. Look at the brain's anatomy and physiology, but also recognize where it came from, what regulates it, and where it's going. That's you, no different from your patient, except you may not be in control after all. Even if there is no free will, and we are simply circuits set in motion by billions of external forces and only existing for a flicker in time, much like billiards on a pool table, thinking they're changing their little world, but in reality knocked by something bigger and destined to stop, the fact that we can see light and feel warmth gives us faith in our ability and need to share truth and love. Objectively, for all its missteps, the world has become a better place the past several hundred years. There's good reason to have faith in ourselves. Don't leave or catastrophize. Be the solution. Sometimes you have to let go. That dichotomy between being in complete control and letting go is one of the mysteries of life. We may not be in control after all. Neuroscience actually suggests this. Just as our vision is mere perception of a reality that we'll never see, and our identity, the product of chance, circumstance, is our will and experience, are our choices shadows of phenomena that have already happened. Let go, love and learn. Live the show, play a role, control what you think you can control, it will be over tomorrow. But don't let go too easy. Yoga mats, nature trails, art-filled offices might be a time to reflect, but they're not a place for permanent settlement. What are we here for? What do we value? What is our purpose? We'll have plenty of time to let go after we die. So we need to continue to cut against the grain of disease. It's our higher pleasure. It is our purpose. It is our duty. It is our freedom. And when we realize that physical disease, in large part, results from societal disease, we need to confront thin pathologic conceptions of freedom, respect, success, and happiness, wherever they are, even in healthcare, that prioritize Dopa-Money over life and are the root cause of most suffering. Freedom is not just doing what you want, because that has consequences, in the end will cause more pain than pleasure. It's ill-informed to just do what we want. We need to ensure that our choices are also informed by knowledge and power. We need to respect each other, and that doesn't always mean agreeing all the time. We need to engage each other in dialectical conversations to improve ourselves and each other, not to regress in anger or in silence. Respectful disagreement is the seed of progress, and our current definitions of success and happiness are perverting us and causing us to die slowly. Dopa-Money is the nuclear crisis of the 21st century. Both arose from two things, neurosis and technology. But unlike the nuclear crisis, Dopa-Money is not a threat but a reality, a war that is already taking place and killing us slowly. Our individual circumstances and identities are lenses through which we as humans have no choice but to experience the world through. But in the 21st century, we're living inside, not through, these lenses. These lenses have become inwardly reflecting, overly stimulated bubbles that make us neurotic and susceptible to false dichotomies. Alarmists are everywhere, not only politicians and the media endlessly finding fault in others, but now regular people everywhere are living grievance narratives with no desire to find a solution, which almost always is possible and within ourselves. Fixations over things that don't really matter replace genuine concern over what really matters. Our minds, words, and actions are just as much garbage as the junk food, nicotine, and other substances we put in ourselves in the futile attempt to fill this internal void. Most of us are only living on the surface of life. Most of us will die, having never lived. How do you know you're not one of these people? Well, simply embrace humility. Worrying that you might be wrong is generally the best and perhaps the only way to know you're right, or at least that you're getting closer to it. That sort of vigilant humility is what drives safe surgery. Experienced surgeons have a way of letting go in the face of challenge, yet at the same time being in complete control. This is a phenomenon known as flow. Flow is an answer to 21st century neurosis. Flow is a state in which we are engaged in our experience, yet removed by 1 degree from the arbitrary particulars of it, because we recognize that these particulars are neither in our control nor carry moral worth. Flow incorporates purpose, humility, curiosity, creativity, dialogue, and grit. We live at, and are conductors of, the interface between is and ought. We become aware that every facet of our existence is a dance of electricity in our heads, and we dance with it. Every circumstance is arbitrary. All the particulars fade away. Paradoxically, the perspective provided by letting go reveals that we have more control than we think. War and disease are caused by cycles, and we have the power to turn off the switch. The only life we have is this moment. Every moment is an opportunity to emancipate our world and ourselves. We find ourselves by losing ourselves. Live the answers to the problems you see. We're only good surgeons to the extent that we're good doctors. Good doctors only to the extent that we're good citizens. Good citizens only to the extent that we are good people, and good people only to the extent that we strive to be good. Only by striving for a more coherent vision of our own lives can we possibly form a more perfect union as a people. Finding a better version of ourselves is the antidote to the troubles of this world. These troubles have existed since the beginning of time. They cause disease and they cause war, these cycles that we have control to stop. But there's a problem. Once you're emancipated, you feel free, but also things are strange. There's alienation. How do you know what to do next? As Teddy Roosevelt would say, keep your eyes on the stars and your feet on the ground. If I may add, live somewhere in between, because those stars are so far away and vague, and the ground on which you step is very shaky. Your hands are among the steadiest things in this world and the source of hope. Have faith in yourself. Once the familiar turns strange, one can be more confident in the self that remains. Once you've entered to grow in wisdom, how can you not leave to better serve humankind? Life's a lot of work, but the greatest work of all is life. Every moment is an opportunity to emancipate ourselves and our world from suffering of all kinds. Thank you to all the doctors who taught me and to all my patients. You have the harder job and inspire everything. Special thanks to Professor Michael Sandel, the greatest teacher I never knew I had. Thank you, YouTube and Dr. Sandel, for putting your videos online. They're available to all, and all are encouraged to view if you haven't already, to enter to grow in wisdom for free. The best things in life are free. Now I know what you're thinking. How do we turn these principles into reality in today's environment? Do a better job of convincing others you're on their side, because you are. Show people that regardless of their political preferences, the healthcare crisis is a legitimate national security threat that requires strong central action like the United States military. Find unique ways of sharing your message, such as incorporating frank information and even status updates regarding obesity and nicotine at every patient interaction with the healthcare system, from the electronic patient portal to signs in elevators and waiting rooms to every phone call. Use capitalism to incentivize healthy behaviors and disincentivize unhealthy ones. When we do the proper accounting, keeping patients healthy can be good for business. Find unique ways of engaging patients regardless of their circumstances or beliefs. I've never been religious, and this is my truth. But those like me often fail to engage the truths that others legitimately hold, and we can do a better job at finding common ground. Scott and I keep these Christmas and Easter decorations outside our home year-round because we find inspiration in the story of the ultimate wounded healer. This is the pride flag we fly in our rural community, and countless strangers have stopped by and told us how much they love us. We all have so much more in common than we think, and our potential to heal is boundless. So the answer to broken backs, broken doctors, and broken healthcare is the same. Use as little Dopa-Money as possible and only as necessary to serve a greater good. Don't ever let Dopa-Money use you. The fix is here in front of us, every time and every place. Turn off the disease switch